Chapter 5, the future tense. Chapter 5 covers the following: the formation of the future tense, the formation of the imperfect tense, which is not covered in Wheelock, and first and second declension ER adjectives. At the end of the lesson, we'll review the vocabulary you should memorize in this chapter. There are 3 important rules to remember. Rule 1. The tense sign for the future tense is BI, meaning will. Rule 2. The tense sign for the imperfect tense is BA, meaning was or were, used to, kept on, or did. Rule 3. Adjective endings are directional. The future tense in Latin. The future tense indicates that the action of the verb will take place at some point after the present. The English future tense sign is will. Shall is no longer used. English inserts the future tense sign will between the personal pronoun, I, you, he, and the verb base. For example, they will love. We will warn. I will be mistaken. Latin does the same, except that the verb base plus the thematic vowel precedes the personal ending. Meaning love, A the thematic vowel, and S the personal ending denoting you. The future tense sign BI goes between the base and thematic vowel and the ending. A, B, S. Love will you, literally in that order, meaning you will love. Here are some examples of the future tense in Latin. Vocabimus, we will call. Monebit, he will warn. Remember that the elements of a Latin verb come in the reverse order from English verbs. Latin starts with a base, which conveys the meaning, then the tense sign, then the personal ending. English starts with the pronoun, the equivalent of the personal ending in Latin, then the tense sign, then the verb base, which conveys the meaning. Here are the first and second conjugation future tense endings: bo, bis, bit, bimus, bitis, bunt. 2 of these endings, you will note, are slightly irregular. The first person singular, bo, is a combination of bi, the future tense marker, and o, the first person singular personal ending. The third person plural ending, bunt, is a combination of bi and the third person plural personal ending nt. And here is a conjugation of a first conjugation verb in the future tense: amabo, amabis, amabit, amabimus, amabitis, amabunt. And here's the translation of that same verb in the future tense: I will love, I will be loving, and so on. Here is a conjugation of a second conjugation verb in the future tense: walebo, walebis, walebit, walebimus, walebitis, walebunt. Note that only the thematic vowel is different between first and second conjugation. And here is the translation of that same verb in the future tense: I will thrive, I will be thriving, and so on. The imperfect tense in Latin. Wheelock doesn't introduce the imperfect tense until chapter 15, but it's better to learn it now for 2 reasons. It's a basic form used widely in Latin. You need to be familiar with it as early as possible in your study of Latin. And by chapter 15, you'll appreciate an easy chapter with no new forms to learn. In grammar, imperfect means unfinished. Im means not, and perfect means done. This tense signifies action that was not completed in the past, or was repeated, or habitual. As such, it best corresponds to English past tense forms like was doing, used to do, kept on doing. The simple past did is another possible translation, but don't use it for now. We'll talk about that later. The imperfect tense sign in Latin is BA, which is placed between the base plus thematic vowel and the ending. Note that's exactly the same position as the future tense sign, isn't it? Here's an example of an imperfect verb in Latin: vocabamus, we were calling, or we used to call, or we kept on calling, or the simple past we called, but I've already warned you once not to use that. Don't do it. Here are the imperfect tense endings in Latin: bam, bas, bat, bamus, batis, bant. Well, hallelujah, there are no irregularities. And here's an example of a first conjugation verb in the imperfect tense: amabam, amabas, amabat, amabamus, amabatis, amabant. Be sure that you take some time to practice these on your own. Wheelock doesn't introduce the imperfect tense until chapter 15, and you're expected to know it from now on. And here is a translation of that same first conjugation verb in the imperfect tense. I was loving, I used to love, I kept on loving, I loved, you were loving, you used to love, blah, blah, blah. I think you get the gist. If you don't, send me an email in Latin. Here's an example of a second conjugation verb in the imperfect tense. Walebam, walebas, walebot, walebamus, walebatis, walebant. Note that second conjugation verbs use the thematic vowel E, but again, that's the only major change between first and second conjugation. And here's a translation of that same verb in the imperfect tense. I was thriving, I used to thrive, I kept on thriving, I thrived, but I'm not going to if I have to say all these forms. So I'm going to move on. Before we leave them, let's review the imperfect and future tense in Latin. Note that the imperfect and future tense markers are very similar. BA signifies the imperfect, BI signifies the future. The only consistent difference is that A is used in the imperfect and I is used in the future. Remember also that the imperfect has no irregular forms, while the future has two, bo and bunt. Let's leave the world of verbs for a moment and look at adjectives with bases ending in R. Just like nouns, adjectives with R at the end of their base either contract and have just R, or they don't contract and have ER. Noster, nostra, nostrum, meaning our, this adjective contracts, and thus its base is NOSTR. Alter, altera, alterum, meaning other, this adjective does not contract, its base is ALTER. Be careful to note in your vocabulary lists whether or not an ER adjective contracts or not, since having the correct base is essential in creating the other case forms properly. And remember, if an adjective contracts, the ER form shows up only in the masculine nominative singular, that is, noster. In all the other forms, there's just an R, not an ER. Finally, let's look at the vocabulary for Chapter 5. The first word, animus, animi, masculine, means soul, spirit, mind. This is a second declension masculine noun. The plural, animi, has a meaning somewhat different from the singular. It means high spirits, pride, courage. English has plurals that work like this: brains, wits, spirits, guts. All of these plurals also denote a single abstract quality. The next word is culpa, culpi, feminine, meaning blame or fault. This is a first declension feminine noun. Next, gloria, gloriae, feminine, meaning glory or fame, another first declension feminine noun. The next word, te, meaning you, singular, is the accusative case form of the second person singular personal pronoun. We'll learn the other case forms for this word later. The next word, propter, meaning on account of, because of, is a preposition that takes the accusative case. Most Latin prepositions take the ablative, not the accusative. It would be wise if you memorized your Latin prepositions as belonging to one of two categories, those that take the ablative and those that take the accusative. The next word is noster, nostra, nostrum, meaning our, that is, belonging to us. It's a first-second declension adjective. As we noted above, this adjective contracts, so its base is nostr. Although the meaning of noster suggests plurality, because it means belonging to us, its ending, like those of all Latin adjectives, agrees with the noun it goes with. So, for instance, if you want to attach noster to gloria, it is nostra gloria, our fame. Nostra is singular because gloria is singular. But if you want to attach noster to amici, it's nostri amici, our friends. Nostri is plural because amici is plural. It's important not to forget the rule that an adjective must agree with the noun it modifies in number, gender, and case. Or, here's another way to think of it. Adjective endings in Latin are directional. That is, their number, gender, and case do nothing more than direct you to the noun they go with. Only when adjectives function as substantives do their gender and number assume any substantive sense. The next word is igitur, meaning therefore or consequently. This is a conjunction, and it's post-positive. Post-positive means the word tends to be the second word in its sentence. For example, pecunia igitur te non servabit, meaning, consequently, money will not save you. In English, we use therefore and however much the same way. For example, we, therefore, decided to depart. You, however, chose to remain. Here's the catch. When you're translating into Latin, remember you should never start your sentence with igitur. Ne. Ne is a particle. Particle is a grammatical term for a small word. Ne signals that the sentence that it's in is a question. Another term for ne is an enclitic, meaning it leans, clitic, on another word, which is a rather poetic and charming way of saying that it is attached to the end of a word and cannot exist independently. For example, pecuniane magistrum servabit, meaning, will money save the teacher? The answer is yes, so go ahead and send it. When you encounter ne in a Latin sentence, don't translate it. Just phrase your English translation as a question. Ne is often attached to non, creating the common Latin sentence opener, none. None is put at the beginning of questions which expect the answer yes. For example, nonne gloria nostra est magna, meaning, isn't our glory great? Or, our glory is great, isn't it? Num is put at the beginning of questions which expect the answer no. Num animi mei valebunt, meaning, my courage will not prevail, will it? You are responsible for knowing ne, but you are not responsible for knowing num, yet. The next word is satis, meaning enough or sufficient. Like nihil, this noun is indeclinable, which means it doesn't change form as it goes through its cases. In English, enough is both a noun and an adjective. For example, I have enough money. In that sentence, enough is an adjective. I've had enough of that. In this sentence, enough is a noun. But in Latin, satis is only ever a noun. In other words, you always have to say satis pecuniae, enough of money. Note that satis is often followed by a genitive, and for the time being, we'll call that a genitive with satis until we learn the technical term later, the partitive genitive. The next word is tum, meaning then, at that time, thereupon, in the next place. Tum is an adverb, and it doesn't change form. The next word is remaneo, remanere, meaning remain, stay behind, abide, or continue. This is a second conjugation verb. Remaneo means the same thing as maneo, so the re is basically redundant. And finally, the last word in this vocabulary list is supero, superare, meaning be above, have the upper hand, surpass, or conquer. This is a first conjugation verb. And that's it. That's the end of the introduction to Chapter 5. Do you remember the rules that we cited at the beginning of this chapter? Do they now make sense to you? If not, please review this presentation. If so, please proceed to the next slide. For the next class exercise, print out a copy of the worksheet that's attached to Chapter 5 on the course website. Doctrina perfecta, valete discipuli.